Marcus Chun had built his empire from nothing. At 42, he owned 7 restaurants across the city, each one serving food that cost more than most people made in a day. His latest restaurant, Azure, sat in the heart of downtown like a glass cathedral of fine dining. The chandeliers alone had cost him $50,000. On this particular Tuesday evening, Marcus was having dinner with 3 potential investors. They wanted to discuss his expansion plans for the West Coast. The conversation flowed as smoothly as the $200 bottle of wine they shared. Marcus had ordered the chef's special, a piece of Wagyu beef that melted like butter, paired with truffle risotto and vegetables that looked more like art than food. The meeting was going perfectly. The investors were impressed with his numbers, his vision, and his track record. By the time dessert arrived, Marcus was confident he had secured the funding he needed. They shook hands, exchanged business cards, and made plans to meet again the following week to finalize the details. As his guests left, Marcus remained at his table, savoring the last sip of his wine. The restaurant was beginning to empty, and the soft jazz music created a peaceful atmosphere. He had barely touched his meal, too focused on the business discussion to eat properly. The plate in front of him still held half the expensive steak, most of the risotto, and the untouched vegetables. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant about tomorrow's schedule. 3 more investor meetings, a conference call with his lawyers, and a site visit for his potential new location in San Francisco. Marcus was already mentally preparing for the next day when he noticed the waiter approaching to clear his table. "Will there be anything else this evening, Mr. Chun?" the waiter asked politely. "No, thank you. Just the check, please," Marcus replied, not looking up from his phone. As he waited for the bill, Marcus glanced around his restaurant with satisfaction. The evening service had gone smoothly. The customers seemed happy, and the staff was performing at their usual high standard. He made a mental note to compliment the head chef on the Wagyu preparation, even though he had barely eaten it himself. The waiter returned with a leather folder containing his bill. Marcus handed over his platinum card without even checking the amount. Money had stopped being a concern for him years ago. As he signed a receipt, he heard a small voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus turned to see a young boy standing a few feet away. The child couldn't have been more than 10 years old, with dark hair that needed cutting and clothes that had seen better days. His jeans had patches on the knees, and his sneakers were worn thin. But what struck Marcus most was the boy's eyes. They were bright and intelligent, despite the obvious signs of hardship. "Can I take your leftovers, sir?" the boy asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus blinked, unsure he had heard correctly. In his high-end restaurant, where a single appetizer cost $60, a child was asking for his leftover food. The question seemed so out of place that for a moment, Marcus wondered if this was some kind of joke. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Marcus asked, setting down his pen. The boy took a small step forward, gathering courage. "Your food, sir. You didn't finish it. Can I have it? I'm really hungry." Marcus looked down at his plate. The expensive meal sat there, barely touched, about to be thrown away. Then he looked back at the boy, who was clearly nervous but trying to maintain his dignity despite asking for scraps. "How did you get in here?" Marcus asked, though not unkindly. His restaurant had strict policies about who could enter. The maitre d' at the front would never have allowed an unaccompanied child inside, especially one who looked like he couldn't afford a glass of water, let alone a meal. "I came through the back," the boy admitted honestly. "I saw all the food getting thrown away in the big bins. I thought maybe I could ask before it got wasted." Marcus felt something twist in his stomach. This child had been watching his restaurant throw away perfectly good food while he went hungry. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was sitting here worried about million-dollar expansion plans while a 10-year-old was scrounging for scraps behind his building. "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Tommy," the boy replied. "Tommy Rodriguez." "Where are your parents, Tommy?" Tommy's shoulders sagged slightly. "My mom's at work. She cleans offices at night." "My dad." He paused, looking down at his worn shoes. "My dad left last year." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Here was a child, alone and hungry, while his single mother worked night shifts to keep them afloat. Meanwhile, Marcus was about to let a $60 steak get scraped into the garbage. "Sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Tommy hesitated. "I don't want to get in trouble, sir. I just wanted the food." "You won't get in trouble. Sit." Slowly, Tommy climbed into the elegant chair that probably cost more than his mother made in a month. He looked tiny against the luxurious leather, his feet barely touching the floor. Marcus pushed his plate across the table. "Go ahead. Eat." Tommy's eyes widened. "Really? All of it? All of it?" Without another word, Tommy picked up the heavy silver fork and began eating. Marcus watched in fascination as the boy carefully cut small pieces of the steak, chewing slowly and savoring each bite. It was clear he was trying to make the meal last as long as possible. "Is it good?" Marcus asked. Tommy nodded enthusiastically, his mouth full. He swallowed before speaking. "It's the best thing I've ever tasted, sir. Thank you so much." Marcus called over a waiter. "Bring a glass of milk and some bread rolls," he instructed. As Tommy continued eating, Marcus found himself studying the boy more carefully. Despite his obvious poverty, Tommy had good manners. He used his napkin, didn't talk with his mouth full, and said please and thank you without being reminded. Someone had raised him well, even under difficult circumstances. "Tell me about your mother," Marcus said. Tommy looked up from the plate. "She's the best mom in the world. She works really hard, but sometimes there's not enough money for food and rent both. She always makes sure I eat first, even if that means she doesn't get much." "And school? Do you go to school?" "Yes, sir. I love school. My teacher says I'm really smart with numbers. I want to be a businessman someday, like the people who eat here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You want to be a businessman?" "Yes, sir. I watch sometimes through the window. All the people in nice suits, talking about important things. They look so confident and successful. I want to be like that someday, so my mom doesn't have to work so hard." Something in Tommy's earnest explanation hit Marcus harder than any business presentation ever had. This child wasn't just hungry for food. He was hungry for opportunity, for a chance to build something better for himself and his mother. "How often do you come here looking for food?" Marcus asked. Tommy looked embarrassed. "Only when things are really bad at home. Maybe once a week. I don't like taking things, but sometimes we don't have anything else." Marcus did quick math in his head. Once a week, this child was so hungry that he risked getting in trouble just to eat discarded food from his restaurant. While Marcus worried about which wine to pair with his meals, Tommy was grateful for scraps. "Finish eating," Marcus said quietly. "Then, I want to walk you home." Tommy looked up in surprise. "You want to walk me home? But you're important. You own this whole place." "Yes, I do. And I want to meet your mother." As Tommy finished the last of the risotto, Marcus found himself making a decision that would change everything. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do yet, but he knew this encounter was more than just coincidence. Something about this boy's dignity in the face of hardship, his dreams despite his circumstances, and his love for his mother had awakened something in Marcus that had been sleeping for years. Tommy carefully wiped his mouth with a cloth napkin and folded it neatly beside the empty plate. "Thank you, sir. That was amazing. I won't forget this kindness." Marcus stood up and put on his expensive coat. "Neither will I, Tommy. Neither will I." As they walked toward the restaurant's back exit, Marcus caught sight of himself in one of the mirrors lining the wall. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful businessman in a tailored suit, expensive watch, and Italian shoes. But tonight, for the first time in years, he wondered what kind of man he really was underneath all that success. Tommy walked beside him, no longer the nervous child who had asked for leftovers, but a boy who had been shown unexpected kindness by a stranger. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the beginning of a journey that would transform both their lives in ways they never could have imagined. The cool night air hit them as they stepped outside, and Marcus realized he was about to discover a side of his city and himself that he had never seen before. Tommy led Marcus through streets that seemed to belong to a different world. They walked away from the gleaming downtown district with its bright lights and clean sidewalks, moving into neighborhoods where the streetlights were dim and Many windows were boarded up. Marcus had driven through these areas before, but always with his windows up and doors locked, rushing to get to the highway. Now, walking beside Tommy, he saw details he had never noticed. Children's chalk drawings on cracked sidewalks. Laundry hanging between fire escapes. Elderly people sitting on stoops, greeting Tommy by name as they passed. This wasn't just a poor neighborhood. It was a community, and Tommy was clearly part of it. "Hi, Mrs. Garcia." Tommy called to an older woman sweeping her front steps. "Tommy, you're out late tonight," she replied in accented English. "Your mama will worry." "I'm okay. This nice man bought me dinner," Tommy said proudly. The woman looked at Marcus with suspicious eyes, taking in his expensive clothes and polished appearance. Her expression softened only slightly when Tommy smiled and waved. As they continued walking, Marcus began to understand why Tommy had to search for food. The small grocery stores they passed had bars on their windows and signs advertising check cashing services. The prices posted outside were higher than what Marcus paid at his upscale market downtown, but the quality of the produce looked questionable at best. "That's where my mom shops," Tommy explained, pointing to a corner store with flickering neon signs. "Everything costs more here, but we don't have a car to go anywhere else." Marcus nodded, beginning to grasp the cruel mathematics of poverty. When you're poor, everything costs more: food, banking, insurance, even laundry. The very people who could least afford high prices were forced to pay them. They turned down a narrower street lined with apartment buildings that had seen better decades. The paint was peeling, some windows were cracked, and the sidewalks were uneven. But Marcus also noticed attempts at beauty: flower boxes in some windows, a small vegetable garden squeezed between two buildings, colorful murals painted on what could have been ugly walls. "That's where I live," Tommy said, pointing to a 4-story brick building. "Third floor, apartment 3B. Marcus looked up at the building. It wasn't the worst he had seen tonight, but it was clearly struggling. The front steps needed repair, and one of the security lights was burned out. Still, someone had planted flowers in large coffee cans by the entrance, and the windows he could see had curtains, suggesting people who cared about making their homes as nice as possible despite limited resources. "Will your mother be home yet?" Marcus asked. Tommy checked a digital watch that was too big for his thin wrist. "She should be back from her first job. She has to leave for the office cleaning in about an hour." "First job?" "She works at a diner during the day and cleans offices at night. Weekends too, sometimes." Tommy said this matter-of-factly, as if having a mother who worked 7 days a week was perfectly normal. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. This woman was working herself to exhaustion just to keep them housed and fed, and still it wasn't enough. Still, her son had to ask strangers for leftover food. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs, passing doors where Marcus could hear television shows in different languages, babies crying, and families having dinner. The smells coming from under the doors reminded him that these weren't just apartments. They were homes where people were living full lives, just with much less money than he was used to. Tommy stopped in front of a door marked 3B and knocked gently. "Mom? It's me." The door opened immediately, as if someone had been listening for footsteps in the hallway. A young woman appeared, probably in her early 30s, with tired eyes but a beautiful smile. She had the same dark hair as Tommy and the same intelligent expression. When she saw Marcus standing beside her son, her smile faded into confusion and worry. "Tommy, where have you been? And who?" She looked Marcus up and down, taking in his expensive clothes and polished appearance. "Mom, this is Mr. Chun. He owns that fancy restaurant downtown. He gave me dinner." Tommy's excitement was clear, but his mother's expression grew more concerned. "What restaurant? Tommy, what did you do?" She looked mortified, probably imagining her son had gotten into some kind of trouble at an upscale establishment. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" Marcus stepped forward. "I'm Marcus Chun. Your son didn't do anything wrong. In fact, he taught me something important tonight." Maria Rodriguez invited them into her small apartment, though Marcus could see she was uncomfortable having a stranger in her home. The apartment was tiny but spotlessly clean. The furniture was old and mismatched, but everything was arranged with care. Children's drawings were taped to the refrigerator, and a small bookshelf was packed with library books and Tommy's schoolwork. "Please sit," Maria said, gesturing to a small couch. "Can I get you something to drink? I have water, or I can make coffee." Marcus could see she was nervous, probably wondering why a wealthy businessman was in her living room at 9 o'clock at night. "Water will be fine, thank you." As Maria went to the kitchen, Tommy showed Marcus around the small space with obvious pride. "This is our couch. Mom got it at a garage sale and cleaned it up real nice. And this is my homework station." He pointed to a small table near the window with notebooks stacked neatly and pencils and a coffee can. "You do your homework here every night?" Marcus asked. "Every night. Mom says education is the most important thing, even more important than food sometimes." Tommy paused, "Though I'm glad we don't have to choose between them very often." Maria returned with 3 glasses of water and sat across from Marcus, her posture straight and dignified despite her obvious exhaustion. "Mr. Chun, please tell me what happened." "Tommy sometimes, he's a good boy, but when he gets hungry." Marcus held up his hand gently. "Tommy asked if he could have my leftover food from dinner. He was polite and honest about being hungry. I was impressed by his manners and his courage." Maria's face flushed red. "I'm so sorry. I work as hard as I can, but sometimes it's not enough. I never wanted him to have to ask strangers for food." "You have nothing to apologize for," Marcus said firmly. "You're raising an extraordinary young man." For the next hour, Marcus listened to their story. Maria had been married to Tommy's father, who left when the medical bills from Tommy's bout with pneumonia became overwhelming. She had been working 2 jobs ever since, but the cost of rent, utilities, food, and other necessities always seemed to exceed what she could earn. "I applied for food assistance," Maria explained, "but there's a waiting list, and I make just enough that we don't qualify for some programs, but not nearly enough to actually live comfortably." Marcus learned that Maria had been an accounting student before Tommy was born. She had dropped out to work and support her family, always planning to go back to school someday when things got easier. But things never got easier, they just got more complicated. "I want to finish my degree," Maria said quietly. "I know I could get a better job with better hours if I had that piece of paper. But I can't afford to take time off work to go to classes, and I can't afford childcare for Tommy while I'm studying." Tommy sat beside his mother, holding her hand as she spoke. Marcus could see the love between them, and also the weight of responsibility that both of them carried. Tommy worried about his mother working too hard, and Maria worried about providing for her son's future. "Tommy tells me he wants to be a businessman," Marcus said. Maria's face lit up with pride. "He's so smart with numbers. His teacher says he could probably test into the gifted program if we could afford the testing fees and transportation to a different school." "Testing fees. Everything costs money," Maria said with a tired smile. "Even the opportunity to prove your child is smart enough for better opportunities." Marcus felt anger building in his chest, but not at Maria or Tommy. He was angry at a system that put barriers in front of children like Tommy, who had the intelligence and drive to succeed, but lacked the financial resources to access opportunities. As the conversation continued, Marcus found himself seeing Maria not as a woman who needed charity, but as someone who had been fighting an unfair fight with tremendous courage and dignity. She worked 16 hours a day, maintained a clean and loving home for her son, and still found energy to help him with homework and encourage his dreams. "I should let you get ready for work," Marcus said finally, noticing Maria glance at the clock. "Thank you for being kind to Tommy," Maria said as she walked him to the door, "and for bringing him home safely. Not many people would have taken the time." Marcus paused in the doorway. "Mrs. Rodriguez, would it be all right if I came back tomorrow? I'd like to continue our conversation." Maria looked surprised. "Of course, but why?" Marcus looked at Tommy, who was watching their interaction with bright, curious eyes. "Because I think there might be ways I can help. And More importantly, I think there might be ways you and Tommy can help me become a better person. After Marcus left, he walked slowly back toward his car, which he had left in the restaurant's parking lot. The expensive vehicle looked almost obscene after spending time in Tommy and Maria's modest apartment. As he drove home to his luxury condo, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the contrast between his lifestyle and theirs. His condo was 3 times the size of their apartment and cost him more per month than Maria made in a year. His kitchen was filled with expensive appliances he rarely used, while Maria prepared nutritious meals for Tommy on a tiny stove with mismatched pots and pans. That night, Marcus lay in his king-sized bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. For years, he had measured his success by the size of his bank account and the expansion of his business empire. He had told himself that his wealth was a reward for his hard work and intelligence. But meeting Tommy and Maria had forced him to confront an uncomfortable truth. He hadn't succeeded in a vacuum. He had succeeded in a system that gave him advantages while creating barriers for others. His expensive education, his family connections, and even his access to startup capital had all been privileges that most people, including hardworking mothers like Maria, simply didn't have. Marcus realized that tomorrow's visit to the Rodriguez apartment wouldn't be about charity. It would be about justice, opportunity, and perhaps the chance to use his success for something more meaningful than just accumulating more wealth. For the first time in years, Marcus fell asleep thinking about someone other than himself, planning not his next business move, but his next move as a human being. Marcus returned to apartment 3B the next evening, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought Sarah Mitchell, the director of a scholarship foundation he had researched all day, and Dr. James Park, an educational consultant who specialized in helping gifted students from low-income families. When Maria opened the door and saw the small group, her face showed a mixture of confusion and concern. "Mr. Chun, is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Marcus assured her. "I brought some friends who want to meet you and Tommy. May we come in?" Tommy appeared beside his mother, his eyes bright with curiosity. He had clearly been waiting for Marcus to return, probably wondering if the previous night had been too good to be true. As they settled into the small living room, Marcus began to explain what he had been thinking about all day and night. "Maria, yesterday you mentioned wanting to finish your accounting degree. Sarah here runs a foundation that provides scholarships for single mothers returning to school." Sarah leaned forward with a warm smile. "We cover not just tuition, but also childcare, transportation, and living expenses while you're in the program. We've helped over 300 women complete their education in the past 5 years." Maria's hands trembled slightly as she set down her water glass. I don't understand. Why would you want to help me? You don't even know me." "Because your son asked me for my leftover food," Marcus said simply. And in that moment, he showed me something I had forgotten about courage, dignity, and what real need looks like. Dr. Park spoke up next. "Tommy, your mother tells me you're excellent with numbers. I'd like to give you some tests, if that's okay. Not scary tests," he added quickly, seeing Tommy's nervous expression. "Fun puzzles and problems. I think you might qualify for some special programs." Over the next 2 hours, the apartment transformed into a planning session. Sarah explained scholarship applications while Dr. Park worked with Tommy on mathematical puzzles that made the boy's face light up with joy. Marcus found himself taking notes, not about business deals or profit margins, but about daycare schedules and university registration deadlines. "I can't accept all this," Maria said quietly during a break in the conversation. "It's too much. I don't have any way to pay you back." Marcus had been expecting this reaction. "Maria, 3 years ago, I opened my newest restaurant. The total cost was $1.2 million. I spent more on the wine cellar than most people make in 5 years. Last night, I was going to throw away $60 worth of food without thinking twice about it." He paused, making sure she was listening. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering investment. I believe that helping you finish school and helping Tommy reach his potential will create more value in the world than another expensive restaurant ever could." Tommy had been listening while working on Dr. Park's puzzles. Mr. Chun, what's investment mean? It means when you spend money on something because you believe it will become more valuable later, Marcus explained. Like when your mom buys you books instead of toys, because she believes the education will help you become successful. Tommy nodded seriously. So you're investing in me and Mom? Yes, exactly. What do you want us to become more valuable at? Marcus smiled at the boy's directness. I want your mother to become the accountant she's always dreamed of being. And I want you to become whatever you dream of becoming: businessman, scientist, teacher, anything at all. Dr. Park looked up from Tommy's completed puzzles with excitement. Maria, your son isn't just smart. He's exceptionally gifted. These scores suggest he could be doing high school level mathematics right now. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Tommy looked confused. Does that mean I'm weird? It means you're special, Dr. Park said gently. And it means we need to make sure you're in schools that can challenge you properly. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out enrollment forms. Maria, if you're interested, we can get you registered for the spring semester. The program is accelerated. You could have your degree in 18 months instead of 4 years. Maria looked around the room at these strangers who had suddenly appeared in her life with offers that seemed too good to be real. Why? She asked again. I still don't understand why you would do all this for people you just met. Marcus set down his coffee cup and considered his answer carefully. 2 days ago, I had dinner with investors who wanted to give me $10 million to expand my business empire. I was excited about opening more restaurants, making more money, acquiring more things. Then your son asked me for my leftovers, and I realized I didn't even know who I was anymore. He gestured around the small, clean apartment. You work 16 hours a day to take care of your child and maintain your dignity. You've never stopped believing in education or dreaming about a better future, even when everything seems impossible. You've raised a son who says please and thank you even when he's asking for scraps. Marcus's voice grew stronger. I've spent 20 years building businesses, but I don't think I've spent a single day building anything that really matters. You and Tommy, you matter. Your dreams matter. And maybe helping you achieve those dreams will help me remember what success is actually supposed to look like. Tommy had stopped working on his puzzles and was listening intently. Mr. Chun, if Mom goes to school and I go to a special school, will we still be a family? Of course you'll still be a family, Marcus assured him. You'll just be a family with more opportunities. Maria wiped tears from her eyes, trying to maintain her composure. I need to think about this. It's overwhelming. Of course, Sarah said understandingly. Take all the time you need. These opportunities will still be here when you're ready. But Tommy spoke up from his spot on the floor. Mom, remember what you always tell me? You say that when someone offers to help you fly, you don't ask why the sky is blue. You say thank you and you spread your wings. Everyone turned to look at the 10-year-old boy who had just quoted what was clearly one of his mother's life lessons back to her. Maria stared at her son, then began to laugh and cry at the same time. You're right, baby. You're absolutely right. She turned to Sarah. Where do I sign? The next few hours flew by in a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and planning. Sarah made arrangements for Maria to take the placement tests needed for the accelerated program. Dr. Park contacted principals at 3 different schools with programs for gifted students. Marcus found himself coordinating schedules and making lists of practical necessities they hadn't considered. Transportation, he said, looking up from his notes. Maria, how do you usually get to work? I take the bus. Sometimes I walk if the weather's nice, and I'm not too tired. Marcus realized that all their careful plans could fall apart on something as simple as reliable transportation to classes and meetings. That won't work with your new schedule. You'll need a car. Mr. Chun, I can't afford a car payment on top of everything else. You're not buying it. I am. Consider it a business expense. I need my accounting student to get to class on time. Tommy looked up from where he was organizing his new workbooks. Mr. Chun, are you going to be like our family now? The question caught Marcus off guard. He looked around the room at Maria, who was filling out scholarship applications with tears of hope in her eyes, and at Tommy, who was already diving into mathematics problems that would challenge high school students. "I don't know what our relationship will be, Tommy. I just know that meeting you changed something in me that I didn't even realize was broken." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the parking lot of the community college, waiting for Maria to finish her final exam. She had thrown herself into her studies with the same determination she had shown in working multiple jobs, and her professors were consistently amazed by her performance. Tommy was in the car beside him, working on a calculus problem that Dr. Park had assigned. The boy had tested into a specialized program for mathematically gifted students and was thriving in an environment that challenged his abilities. "How do you think she did on the test?" Tommy asked without looking up from his work. "I think your mother could teach that class," Marcus replied. "She's going to graduate with honors. And then she'll get a good job with regular hours?" Marcus confirmed. Tommy finished his problem and looked up at Marcus. "Mr. Chun, I figure out what you got from this deal." "Oh, what's that?" "You got to remember that success isn't about how much money you have. It's about how many people you help become successful too." Marcus looked at this remarkable child who continued to surprise him with insights that surpassed his years. "How did you figure that out?" "Because you're happier now than you were that first night when you had all that money but were eating dinner alone." Before Marcus could respond, Maria emerged from the building with a huge smile on her face. She practically ran to the car, her excitement obvious even from a distance. "I passed," she called out as she approached. "Not just passed. I got the highest score in the class." Tommy cheered, and Marcus felt a pride he had never experienced in any of his business achievements. This wasn't about him at all, but somehow it felt like the most important success of his life. "There's something else," Maria said, catching her breath. "Professor Williams wants to recommend me for a master's program. She says with my grades and my work experience, I could probably get a graduate degree in accounting and eventually become a CPA." Marcus grinned. "Sounds like I better plan on a bigger investment." "No," Maria said firmly. "This time we're partners. I'm going to pay for my own master's degree with the salary from my new job. And Tommy and I want to start our own scholarship fund for other families like ours." Tommy nodded enthusiastically. "We want to help kids who are hungry but too proud to beg. Kids whose moms work really hard but still need help sometimes." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with pride or accomplishment and everything to do with purpose. "Partners," he agreed. "I like the sound of that." As they drove home through the city, Marcus realized that the boy who had asked for his leftovers had given him something far more valuable than any business deal ever had. Tommy had given him back his humanity, and in return, Marcus had discovered that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars accumulated, but in lives transformed. The restaurant empire that had once defined him was still important, but now it served a bigger purpose. Now it was a tool for creating opportunities for others, for funding scholarships, for proving that success shared was success multiplied. And every night, when Marcus finished his dinner, he made sure that any leftover food found its way to someone who needed it, remembering always the quiet courage of a 10-year-old boy who had taught a millionaire what it really meant to be rich.